Hello, everyone, and welcome to Dynasty 365 on an early edition of Fantasy and Frames Wednesday. I am your host, Tyler Heil. In the house tonight, we have Justin Taylor, Rich Sickles, and our very special guest from Upper Hand Fantasy, Faraz Siddiqi. And we are here to talk about players rising and falling in fantasy value after the NFL draft. Let's do it. All right. Welcome, Faraz, to Dynasty 365. We are very happy to have you joining us. How are you holding up after that very long and very exciting NFL draft?
I appreciate it, man. It was a crazy process. Obviously, leading up to it, all the prospecting work and all the guessing of where they're going to land, and who's going to take advantage of the skill sets, who's going to draft the guy who can't play a certain role as a receiver, and then they plop him into that same exact role in the NFL and watch them fail. It's going to happen, right? So I personally, I love the whole draft process. So I was pretty excited. I was in Mexico in Tulum this weekend for the draft, and it was kind of like our celebratory, like, okay, done prospecting. Like, now it's just time to see where these guys land. So I was excited for the draft, and now I'm excited to continue to evaluate these guys, with their landing spots.
Absolutely. That's exciting. And that's just a little taste of what you can get from Faraz. Faraz, can you tell us a little bit about your site, Upper Hand Fantasy?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we've really gotten our start, and our main community lives on Instagram. So Upper Hand Fantasy on Instagram is really where you can find us for the most part. The website's where you can find all of our rookie draft kits, dynasty draft kits, all that kind of stuff. But yeah, like our Discord is starting to get a little popping too. So yeah, we just we're just trying to grow wherever we can, and I think the Instagram, if you want to find out more, is probably the best place to go.
Absolutely. And I had one question for you. I was looking at your site, and the Dynasty kit and the rookie draft kit look beautiful. Are they
Thank you.
designed to be mobile? Like, is that their primary setting?
You know what? It's a PDF, right? But it's designed by our graphic designer Zach. It's awesome. Like, it's designed for anything. So if you want to do it on mobile, if you want to do it on your iPad, watch it on you want to use it on your iPad, you want to use it on your desktop, it doesn't matter. It's kind of it goes whatever platform you want to use, which is kind of how we designed it. So we want to next year we want to make this a something that's dynamically available on your browser, so that you could just go in your browser, kind of like the Ringer, how they have it going on, where despite regardless of whatever your platform is, you can kind of go on there, and you can expand, and like you can search for position by player and all that kind of stuff. So all that's in the works right now, but right now we're just like a static PDF that we just continue to update as every single week, pretty much. And now we have a big one obviously coming up this weekend, with all the landing spots included.
Nice. Well, I look forward to it, and I definitely love the layout of the Ringer draft guide. So I know what you're going after, and I'm excited for that.
Thanks.
So we're going to jump into some news and notes before we get into our main topics of kind of going over the fallout of the NFL draft. So our first big news: Ezekiel Elliott returns to the Dallas Cowboys. Are you guys just falling all over yourselves to give a first-round pick for Ezekiel Elliott right now, Justin? Are you?
I am not, though I do like him going back there, because I do have quite a bit of Zeke still hanging around on a few rosters. So if he was going to go somewhere where he's going to actually have a chance to be fantasy relevant, I love that move. As you see, they haven't done anything else in the running back market. So him going back there with the familiarity, he's not going to be old Zeke that was there, but he was usable at times for the Patriots last year. And if, the offense is as good as it was last year for the Cowboys, I like plugging him in there. He could be a nice little flex play and desperation RB2 on those bye weeks with injuries and stuff. So I like him. If you're in a win now team, you can get him for cheap with a draft pick, maybe a third or fourth round draft pick, and you need somebody. I don't mind going and getting him. But I definitely not giving up any kind of first round pick for Zeke at this point. That's for sure.
I do not blame you. And our other somewhat related Dallas Cowboys breaking news: Michael Gallup has signed with the Las Vegas Raiders. Rich, are you excited for Michael Gallup in Las Vegas?
Honestly, no. This is a non-issue for me. I'm really not. I was not getting hyped up for it at all. Quick tangent, quick backstory. I once had a draft of my home league I was drafting, and I thought I was setting my queue, and I actually was drafting, and I drafted Mike Gallup in like the 6th round or something like that. I was like I've never lived it down since. So maybe I'm a little biased, but but no, yeah, Michael Gallup in Las Vegas isn't doing anything for me.
Hey, it happens to the best of us. And I admittedly was a Michael Gallup fanboy there for a few years. I thought he was going to be the number 2 that the Cowboys always wanted. And the Cowboys still have yet to find a number 2. So, we all know how that ended. So our second topic that we're going to jump into, do any of these draft spots relate to fantasy success? Are they going to be NFL success? Could they be both? That's what we always want, fantasy and NFL, but sometimes guys are just good to have on a football team and not good to have on your fantasy football team. So we're going to go through some of these rookies. We're going to start with Bucky Irving. Faraz, can you tell me a little bit about Bucky Irving's landing spot and how you're feeling about his value?
Yeah, man. So, landing with the Bucks, a little sneaky here. I'm actually a big fan of Bucky Irving. Now, I do think that I have to limit my exposure on Irving and how much I want to bet on him, given that he'll need to be an outlier, right? Like from a draft capital perspective, from a size perspective, from an athletic perspective, right? There's a lot of things here that are knocks on Bucky Irving, right? With all that being said, I think he's a good football player. Career yards after contact, 92nd percentile among qualifying running backs since 2014. Missed tackles forced per attempt, 99th percentile among qualifying running backs since 2014. Receiving game, 1.39 yards per route run. That was second only to Jonathan Brooks in this class. All right. So he's not a big play guy, but I think he does enough where I think he can definitely complement Rachaad White on early down. Someone who was extremely inefficient in the run game last year, right? He was solid. He got the volume, very good for fantasy, like extremely consistent, right? But also extremely inefficient in the run game. Like, if you're looking at rush yards over expectations, 6th worst. Yards after contact per attempt, 4th worst. Missed tackle force per attempt, 5th worst. Yards per attempt, 2nd worst. The last one is you can kind of like, that's a combination of him alongside his offensive line. But you look at all the other stuff, kind of like offensive line agnostic for the most part. It wasn't great.
Absolutely, and that was. All of those numbers are awesome, and it kills me to see that yards per attempt. The Bucks had the worst yards per attempt in the NFL last year by a lot. Like they weren't even 1/10 or 100, or it was 1/10 behind the next team. It was 2/10. Like it was not close. It was really ugly. So I'm right there with you, Faraz. Really good tape. I really enjoyed watching Bucky Irving, but everything else. Yes, he's going to have to be an outlier. So I'm right there with you.
The thing for me on Bucky is this just crushes Sean Tucker for me. And I was a huge Sean Tucker guy. I love Sean Tucker coming out. And when I saw him take Bucky, I was like, no, this might be it for Sean Tucker. Because I think Bucky's going to do what I wanted Sean Tucker to do. So I like Bucky on this team. I think it's a nice situation. I thought it was a nice situation for Sean Tucker as an undrafted free agent last year. I thought he would get kind of worked in. I thought maybe this second year would do it. And then them taking Bucky kind of has me worried that he is going to be a no-go there in Tampa whatsoever. But I definitely think there's room for somebody else to get in there. I know me and Jorge shouted from the rooftops about how much we don't like Rachaad White all that much on a couple episodes ago. So I think there's going to be room for Bucky to make some plays and do something. I think he can work his way into that offense and kind of make plays. Like I said, he doesn't do anything like really great, but he's a solid player that makes plays. So I like that landing spot for him. Even though it's going to crush every Sean Tucker share I have.
I don't feel bad for you, Sean Tucker. Me and one of our guys from Fourth and Frames, Drew Scott, had a bit of a rivalry over Sean Tucker, and I'm going to say I won that one, but things could still change. Next guy on the list is the darling of the PFF live draft user voting for about a round and a half of, hey, who's going to land on this team next? Mr. Troy Franklin. Rich, can you tell me a little bit about Troy Franklin?
Sure. So as far as Troy Franklin goes, I was concerned a little bit about his slide in the draft. I was a little concerned about how he ended up falling as far as he did. But I don't think that he could have fallen in a better place, honestly. Like him landing with, well, no, that's not true. There are better places. but him landing with his college football or with his college quarterback is pretty crazy, and that's pretty great. You like to see those kind of stories, and I think that that's going to work well for them. I think it's going to translate into great NFL success, at least. I don't know if it's going to really translate into fantasy success, but I do think that they'll have some good success there with in the NFL. And as far as him in general, like there's not a lot of competition for him for targets in Denver. I mean, right now he does have Sutton still to compete with, but there's been all these talks about Sutton possibly getting traded and everything, bunch of rumors about that. So I'm not really thinking that that's going to be as big of a block for him as what some might think. And then beyond that, you have Mims and Josh Reynolds. So he should have a pretty big role in the offense either way. Even if Sutton does stay, I think he'll have a pretty big role, and I think that he'll do really well. Yeah.
Isn't the ghost of Tim Patrick still in Denver?
He is.
Am I wrong? I'm actually asking.
Yeah. No, I think you're right.
I think they re-signed him or something like that. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, but he has his college quarterback, so sure, he's
fun story. It's a fun story,
right? Yeah. Next guy up, who was drafted by the Panthers in the second round, running back Jonathan Brooks. Justin, what do you think about Jonathan Brooks landing in Carolina?
Brooks was most people's RB1. He was my RB2 behind Troy Benson. I think the landing spot for the Panthers is nice because, Miles Sanders was awful last year, and Chuba was okay. Hopefully that offense can improve and that helps him, but he's going to get touches there. The quality of touches is going to be the question, is how good their offense can actually be. But it's a spot where they're going to have to kind of build around. They're going to want to take a little bit of pressure off Bryce Young, hopefully not get him beat up so much. So I think it's a nice spot for him, especially for fantasy owners. I think there's a good chance that he gets quite a few touches. Just both things, getting catches and everything out of the backfield. So I like it if I'm a fantasy guy. If I'm a Brooks fan, I probably don't love him being on the Panthers because the Panthers aren't going to be very good, I don't think. But I think for fantasy purposes, I think it's a pretty solid spot. Obviously, most people would have rather seen him on someone like Dallas with a really good team and a really good offense. I think that was everybody's hopeful landing spot for him. But I don't think the Panthers is terrible because it really probably should be his backfield sooner rather than later there in Carolina.
Absolutely. And Faraz, do you think Dave Canales being the play caller after leading the worst rushing attack in the NFL last year in Tampa should be a concern for Jonathan Brooks drafters?
No, I don't think so. I think, I really put a lot of blame on the offensive line. I don't know how, maybe the run game coordinator, the offensive line, that's really where I'm putting the blame there. And then also Rachaad White as well. This is these two are not comparable in terms of like who's better at running the football or anything like that. Like they're in two different worlds. I think in the receiving game, you can make an argument that Rachaad White is a much better player. But I think that Jonathan Brooks is also somebody in this particular backfield. You're not looking at Miles Sanders or Chuba Hubbard as somebody who is a plus in the receiving game. Whereas Jonathan Brooks, like he was number one in yards per route run among all these all these prospects, 1.46 yards per route run. That was the 85th percentile among qualifying Power 5 running backs since 2014. So on the top of that, you get the yards after contact numbers, the missed tackles forced numbers. It's through the roof, if you're looking at running back prospects over the past 10 seasons. So this is a pretty good backfield. He could be an every down guy. At some point in year one, it was a clean ACL, so not too super worried about the injury. This is not a Javonte Williams type of situation. This is more of a Breece Hall type of situation. So not super worried about that, right? So I think the landing spot's solid. They're adding pieces. I was going to say some really good pieces, but they've added pieces, and I think that the offense will improve. There are some considerable changes that they've made, right? Dave Canales being one of those guys, right? Is he truly the QB whisperer? This is his real test right here.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, I'm excited to see that. I don't feel great about the possibilities of Bryce Young, but that's to be seen, and that's for another show to break that whole thing down. Speaking of young quarterbacks, our next guy that we want to talk about is JJ McCarthy. And I'm going to take this one just because I've already gone through 3 rookie drafts, and I kind of laid out my thoughts on JJ McCarthy when preparing for this show. And I was like, wait a second. I really like this guy. His situation is fantastic. His film was good. I know it was, limited because of the offense that he was playing in at Michigan, but he had significant draft capital invested in him by the Vikings. He's already the best quarterback on the team. Sorry, Sam Darnold truthers. Does he start right away? Probably not. They'll probably let Sam Darnold take some bullets there for a little bit and, wait, I don't know, a month, 2 months into the season to let him get his action. But the coach and the GM of that team aren't going anywhere. The Vikings are solid in that. He has organizational belief behind him. He has some of the best weapons in the NFL, in my opinion, among the best wide receiver in the NFL, Justin Jefferson, who I hope they sign to a long-term deal sooner rather than later. They have Jordan Addison, who I'm still very excited about. He came in as a rookie last year and really performed well. And TJ Hawkinson, who really truly had his kind of breakout campaign last year when he announced himself as one of the top tight ends in the NFL. And add to all of that, they now have a very good running back. I say what you want about Aaron Jones and his age. Aaron Jones still has some juice, and he's still very good. So I'm excited to see what he can do with all of that and a solid offensive line to boot. So I think in many ways, J.J. McCarthy was drafted into the best situation of any of these rookie quarterbacks, even better than Caleb Williams, who admittedly is in a good position. But Caleb Williams still has a bit of a lame duck head coach, in my opinion. And J.J. McCarthy has a very, very good play caller at head coach in Kevin O'Connell. So I feel really good about this, even if you tell me that Tyler, he's not going to be in the top 5 quarterbacks. That's fine. If he's QB 12 for the next 6 to 8 years, I will be very happy with that. So I don't know if you guys disagree, if anyone disagrees with that take or not, but I like JJ McCarthy this year.
Who has a better landing spot? Who is in a better landing spot, JJ McCarthy or Caleb Williams, you think?
I believe it's JJ McCarthy. No, I'm not saying Caleb's is bad, but Caleb has a decent offensive line. I believe I'd give the advantage to the Vikings there. Weapons, they both have very, very good weapons. I don't want to parse that at this point. Like the Bears have more, but the Vikings have the best. So, take that for what you will. And I think the biggest difference lies in offensive play caller and head coach, where you have that solidity in Minnesota of Kevin O'Connell. Like he's not going anywhere. Is the Bears head coach going to be there next year? Is there, oh God, I forgot the name of their offensive coordinator. Is it Getsy?
Shane Waldron.
Getsy was their old one. Getsy's the one.
Former Seahawks, who I think is actually a underrated hire for them.
Yeah.
I like his play calling. I don't think it's anywhere close. I think Kevin O'Connell is like one of the main reasons why I love JJ McCarthy in Minnesota. I think the reasons I would rank like JJ McCarthy being there, number one would be Justin Jefferson, right? And then number two would be AOC, right? And then number three would be like Jordan Addison or whatever, and TJ Hawkinson, et cetera,
Yeah.
right? That's kind of how I would rank it personally.
As the resident Vikings fan here, I'm just loving all this praise. If you guys want to keep this up, this is great. This is great.
It's like, tell me how great we're going to be.
I traded out of 108 in one of the rookie drafts that I just completed because, it was in our Fantasy and Frames rookie draft. I got some very good IDP players and a 25 first, but I'm somewhat kicking myself right now because I could have had JJ McCarthy there. So I'm sure I'll get another shot at him in one of the 10 to 15 rookie drafts that are coming up here in the next week or so, like we all have, I'm sure.
I just got a shot at Justin Jefferson. I had the 101 and traded Caleb Williams, the 101 for Justin Jefferson, and a team that is pretty good but needed wideout bad, and I was pretty stoked about it.
Nice. So you got it straight up, huh?
I actually got him. I talked him into throwing Wan'Dale Robinson in there too with Justin Jefferson.
Got more.
He's like, I think it's pretty even without him, but he's like, I'm not going to let it go for Wan'Dale Robinson. I'm like, perfect. I'll take it. Thank you.
Congratulations. You have gained a roster clogger.
Yeah, if you saw my wide receivers on this roster, you'd be like, that's a win, buddy. My wide receivers on this roster, my number one wide receiver was Josh Downs. By far. So Wan'Dale's probably going to find his way in the lineup on this team at some point.
Well, if that team could use some wide receiver help, I'm sure they could use some help from the guy we're about to talk to next, depending on how you feel. Depending on how you feel. Roman Wilson, who was drafted by the Steelers. Justin, what do you think about Roman Wilson? Could he benefit your terrible wide receiver team?
He could. I think Roman Wilson actually ended up in a really nice spot here. I think, there's a lot of teams looking at him. I think everybody's kind of seen the video going around where the Jets were looking at taking him, and then they traded up and got Malachi Corley instead. So he ended up falling to the Steelers. I think he could have went earlier. I think a lot of people had a late second round grade on him. So getting him in the third for the Steelers was nice. I just think it's a nice mix. He's a guy, I think as the Steelers looking at it with the Deontay Johnson situation, everything else that's happened lately, they want a guy that's not going to complain if he doesn't get the ball. And that's Roman Wilson. Roman Wilson knows what it's like to not get the ball. He played at Michigan. They ran the ball all the time. He will block. He does have speed. I think he needs some improvement in his game, his route running and some things, but I think he's a guy that fits in well there, just in the system. And the fact that it's wide open wide receiver room with George Pickens. It's George Pickens and no one else until they drafted Roman Wilson. So I think for him, this is a great landing spot for him to get a lot of playing time early. Is he a fantasy relevant guy rookie year? I wouldn't expect him to do a whole lot for you, honestly, but I like the spot. I think long term, it's going to be a good spot for him. I think he's going to improve. I think this team's going to run the ball a lot. I also think they're going to find Pat Freiermuth a lot more than the previous two quarterbacks did when neither one of them refused to, Trubisky and Pickett both refused to throw over the middle. Neither one of them would put the ball over the middle. So Muth basically became irrelevant. So I don't think that's going to be the case. So I don't love it for fantasy this year, but I like it for the future. I think it's a good spot. I'm taking him depending on the league and what I need. I've been seeing him go mid to late third in a lot of leagues. I've seen him go as early as late second. So I wouldn't mind spending a pick on him there, knowing that I'm probably going to need to wait a year or so before I see a lot of production. But I like the landing spot.
Well, thank God the Steelers replaced two quarterbacks that don't like to throw over the middle with Russell Wilson. That should fix it.
We just got to get Justin Fields in the game, man. Just got to get Justin Fields in there.
And
he loves his tight end, man. He throws the Cole Kmet all the time, dude. So I'll get me Justin Fields in there throwing a Muth all day. I'll take that.
Does Arthur Smith being there scare you? Because I was trying to make an argument for Arthur Smith, and I'm like, oh well, he had a lot of success in Tennessee, and I go back and like, sure, their offense was good, but he still depressed AJ Brown. Like AJ Brown's receptions in 2023 tied his career high targets as a Titan.
Yeah, I think the biggest issue for a lot of guys is going to be, I don't think you're going to see a high reception mark for a lot of players. I love it for Najee and Jalen Warren. I've got a ton of them. I think they're set up to have a big year, both of them. I like them both. I think this offense works really good for a guy like George Pickens. I think you're going to get a lot of home run hits, deep balls to him. But again, I think you're going to look at a number like, hey, if he can get like 65 catches for like 1,100, 1,200 yards, and 8 or 9, 10 touchdowns, I think it's a really nice season for George Pickens. So I think it's a big difference when you have a player like him, or you're a guy who like you really need him to catch 90, 95 passes to be relevant. Pickens doesn't have to catch as many to be relevant because he's a deep threat. So I think he works in this offense much better with either quarterback, because I think they both throw the ball deep pretty well. But yeah, if you have I don't think a Deontay Johnson in this offense would be as good. And not because I don't think Deontay's good. I think the problem is he's just not going to see the volume that a guy like him typically needs to see. So I'm not as worried about them. I don't think they're going to have as many guys to feed. So that is what worries me less. I think they will get some guys involved. I just don't think you're going to see a ton of targets for everybody on the whole team. So it might be 1 or 2 guys that you can pretty much play on a regular basis in fantasy, and everybody else is going to be pretty hit and miss, I think.
All right. So the next topic we're going to jump into is veterans. We're going to move away from some of these rookies a bit and see how did these rookies' landing spots affect some of these veterans. So we're going to list some of the guys we're trying to buy low on post NFL draft. So first up, Faraz, can you give me a veteran that you're targeting at a good price to help your fantasy team right now?
Yeah, so it depends on what you're looking for, right? So if I'm looking for a higher end wide receiver who I might not have to spend a whole lot of money on, it'll be Rashee Rice. He will probably be number 1. If I'm looking for a wide receiver who PPR guy, and Justin kind of alluded to it, that would be Deontay Johnson, right? So kind of different tiers depending on what you need, right? And I think starting with Rashee Rice, obviously all the legal stuff going on right now, if you're buying, you're kind of betting on the fact that he'll be suspended for a few games, right? Which doesn't really put a whole lot of dent into his actual value, but puts a huge dent. And right now, there's a huge dent in his perceived value, right? And not only did they sign Hollywood Brown, but they just drafted a rookie wide receiver who a lot of people might be looking at as the guy who they're replacing him with. Remember, when Tyreek Hill was in all the trouble that he was in, what did the Chiefs go ahead and do? They went ahead and drafted who did they end up drafting? Who didn't work out? Mecole Hardman, right? They ended up drafting Mecole Hardman during that controversy, and that didn't really work out so well. I'm not saying that Xavier Worthy he's a way better prospect than Mecole Hardman was, and I think that he can be very successful there. But I think Rashee Rice, after the type of rookie season he had, yards per route run was through the roof as a rookie. You want to bet on guys like that. They knew exactly how to use him. And if I had to guess who's going to lead the Chiefs in targets this year, it would be between him and Kelsey. It's kind of a top heavy target distribution there, right? So he'll be number 1. Deontay Johnson, Xavier Legette goes there. He's somebody who ended up going there in the first round. They traded up for him. I think they reached massively on him, and I think he was not a first round caliber prospect. And I think this opens the door for Deontay Johnson's value to fall, his price to drop tremendously, and you to scoop in and to get somebody who can still end up getting 140, 150 targets on this offense, even with these other guys there.
Love it. I love both of those guys, and I also love the shade that you slid in at Xavier Legette very sneakily. So I enjoyed that.
Well, I was trying to be a little bit more. I was trying to be a little bit more like apparent with it, but I guess it was sneaky. Sounds good.
Well, I just didn't see it coming. Like you're talking about Deontay Johnson, then boom, you kind of sideswipe Xavier Legette as you're driving down the road.
Catching strays over here, man.
Yeah. So what would you pay for Rashee Rice about now?
I would pay a late first for Rashi, and you might not even have to, right? You might not even have to, right? There are enough good wide receiver prospects here, right? Where's Keon Coleman going right now? Keon Coleman is going to end of the first, right?
Yeah, end of first, beginning of the second. I mean, I think you're right. I think you could even go late first or even like 2-1 up to 2-4 for Rashee Rice, because there's going to be wideouts there that people are going to be like excited about, and they'll be like, "Oh, I want that guy," and make the trade. I like that idea a lot.
100%. Like Keon Coleman, like I give me Rashee Rice all day long. You know what I mean? And all whoever's going around that, Ricky Pearsall, range, like that's the range that I'm going for. Like Ricky Pearsall is a prospect that I really like too. Okay, I like him more than Keon Coleman. It's a little crowded right now, obviously, and there's rumors around one of those wide receivers being traded. We'll see if that ends up happening. But regardless, I think that's kind of the range that I would give up for Rashee Rice.
All right, so we got Rashee Rice. Next up, Justin. I see you got some notes in there. What veterans are you targeting right now?
Yeah, and we kind of talked about him up a little bit when we were talking about JJ McCarthy. But if I'm in a win now team and I want to try to get something that's going to help me this year, that's not going to cost me a ton, that's Aaron Jones. They didn't go to the draft. They didn't get anybody. Ty Chandler right now is his backup. We saw him last year. He's okay. He's not great, and so I don't feel like Ty Chandler's going to steal that job unless Aaron Jones gets hurt, something happens to him. So if I need somebody that, somebody's like, hey, Aaron Jones is on an old roster, they're trying to get younger, if I can throw some draft picks or get rid of somebody I don't like as well for him, Aaron Jones to me feels like a guy that's still got something left, and he's going to get every opportunity on which should be a fairly good offense in Minnesota. So I like him just for the cheapness factor. I just think you're going to get more value from him as far as production than what you're going to have to spend to get him. The other guy I kind of had that's going to cost you more money, but is not everyone's probably sold, is Zamir White for the Raiders. They didn't go in and get a draft. They didn't take anybody either. Everybody's kind of looking around like, oh, is he going to make it through the draft as the starter? He did. They added Madison, who, as a Vikings fan, not everybody really loved Alexander Madison last year. So I'm not super worried about Alexander Madison stealing that job. But you're going to have some people out there right now, they're down on the Raiders. They're like, oh, they didn't take a QB. So people are like, oh, man, what are they going to do? They're going to suck. And if you have somebody that thinks they're going to be bad and down, like they might be willing to trade White for not very much because, again, he's unproven. Right now he's the one, RB1 for them, but he's unproven on an offense that a lot of people think is going to be kind of bad. So I think you could actually get him for a decent price if you're willing to take the risk on him.
I like it. And I like Zeus, And apparently that was Zamir White's nickname in college. I learned that last year when I was studying. And so,
nice.
Reason to be
excited. I saw he went back to number 3 from 35, and people were pumped. They're like, he's going to have a huge season now. Got rid of the 35. He went back to the 3 from college. So I'm always a big fan of the single digit numbers. So he went up in my book by just changing to the number 3. So
I don't love either of those numbers.
I love single digits, man. I'm such a single digit guy. I love college with RBs wearing single digits and wideouts wearing single digits. My favorite is you get a big stud D lineman, like D edge wearing number 9. That's like the best. That's awesome. I freaking love it.
Nice. Rich, who do you got? What veterans are you targeting right now?
Sure. So I was looking at it from my perspective on things, and I tend to play a lot of zero and hero RB. So I was looking for a running back that kind of survived the draft, and Justin touched on one of them as far as Zamir White that I've been targeting. But another one that I think could be a sneaky play is Gus Edwards. I think that you could get him for really cheap right now. I just saw him go for a 3rd round pick. I see on the roll talking about Kamani Vidal. Yeah, he is the one thing that I'm worried about with Gus Edwards, because I really do love Kamani Vidal. I really came around after that show that we had with Pat, and so I'm a little worried there, but I think that he'll be okay because Vidal didn't really have the draft capital that you would think where he's going to take over immediately. So I think that Gus will have a good chance at least at starting off as being the guy, and I think he kind of fits what Harbaugh is going to want to do there. So, and he was RB25 last year, 13 touchdowns and limited touches. He had 4.09 yards per carry. Not great, not terrible. I think that he'll be decent, especially in a zero RB, hero RB type of role. I think that he'll be good for just a flex play every now and then.
All right. And so we're just not concerned about J.K. Dobbins in LA? No,
I'm not. I kind of was at first, but honestly, with the Achilles injury and everything, I'm not thinking he's going to do much there. So
I can't see them giving Dobbins more than just, even if he's healthy, some plays here and there. I just can't see them just turning it over to him and being like, oh, he's our guy. Like, I don't see it. Same thing I like Gus. I like Kamani Vidal a lot. 6th round pick for the Chargers. I thought was a really nice pick there. I think he works his way into the lineup there, but it's gonna take some time. I don't think they just come out of camp and go, "Hey, this rookie 6th rounders are RB1." So I do think you're gonna see quite a bit of Gus, and especially early in the season, I think you might get yourself some pretty solid play for him. And again, he's not costing you much if you're looking to go get him. So I like that move as well.
Yeah. And a couple guys that I wanted to highlight that are lower cost right now that could still help your fantasy team out immediately. James Conner, the Cardinals just went and drafted Trey Benson, so immediately James Conner's value is going to take a hit. Conner, they still have him under contract. They could have saved money against the cap this year by cutting him. They kept him on that team for a reason, and Conner still has a little bit of juice, and I think him and Benson are going to share that backfield. So Conner will still have the ability to produce in a fantasy setting. And to be honest with you, I just really like that offense. I like what they're doing with that offense. I trust Drew Petzing, which is a little bit of homerism because he was the quarterback coach of the Browns for a while. But I really liked what they did with that offense last year. So I like James Conner, and another kind of lower profile guy that people kind of want to talk about, but also don't. Khalil Shakir from the Buffalo Bills. Bills just drafted Keon Coleman. I like Keon Coleman. He's, I think he's my wide receiver 5 post draft, and I know a lot of people don't agree with that, but it doesn't really matter if you're Khalil Shakir. They still have a massive amount of vacated targets between Gabe Davis and Stephon Diggs walking out the door. Dalton Kincaid can't take all of them. Plus, he got 90. He already had 91 targets last year. Dalton Kincaid did. So he's going to go up from that, but I don't think he's going to go up that much. And there's still over, I think it's 241 targets that were vacated by those two guys leaving that offense. So someone's going to have to take them, and it's not all going to be Keon Coleman and Dalton Kincaid. So Khalil Shakir kind of stepped up in the Diggs lull near the end of the season last year. He finished as the wide receiver 7 and the wide receiver 20 on a couple of those weeks. He had a goose egg one of those weeks. So, take those numbers for what they're worth. But I think he can be a helpful asset to your fantasy team. So next up is veterans that you're willing to pay up for. So we talked about guys that you can get at a little bit of a value that we're going to buy low on. Who are we willing to just throw the bag at to acquire? For us, who do you got?
All right, these are two guys I'm willing to throw the bag at, but they're going to be a little cheaper post-draft. And by the way, I'm really upset that you didn't mention Curtis Samuel when you talk about the Bills receivers. I'm really upset. Like I was waiting, and I was gonna hold my tongue. Okay, I was really gonna hold my tongue here, but I have to speak up for my guy. Okay, he's gonna be leading the Bills in targets this year.
I was literally just looking at their depth chart. I was like, I know there's somebody else that they just got there, and I was like trying to look. I looked at I was like, oh, Curtis Samuel. I was like, I knew
he's not just somebody else, Justin.
I know, no, that's what I'm saying. No, I like that a lot.
He's back with Brady. He's back with Brady. He's going to be great.
I like it a lot. Curtis Samuel, finally, this is the year, the breakout Curtis Samuel year. I love it.
We've been waiting for it for half a decade.
You got this. All right. So so I don't love buying running backs this time of year, and especially ambiguous backfields, this and that, where a running back can be added super late into the in the offseason, and right before the season starts, you're like, all right, well, I just bought this guy like in May or June or whatever, and things didn't work out like I thought, and now it's a split backfield. So I like buying ambiguous backfields very close to the season. But I think there are two running backs who might have taken a little bit of a hit in a lot of people's eyes after the draft, and that's Devon Achane and Kyren Williams, right? Let me start with Kyren Williams first of all. Blake Corum coming in, obviously, a lot of people, Blake Corum is one of those guys, extremely polarizing. Some people don't love him. Some people love him. Some people think he's better than Kyren Williams. I'm not on that camp, right? I like Kyren Williams a lot. I think he's a very good running back. I think he proved himself without a shadow of a doubt, like that he belongs and he can really run this offense. They literally changed his scheme, their run scheme last year, and he passed that test with flying colors, right? And they love him. Sean McVay loves him. And I think they brought Blake Corum in because they literally had nobody behind Kyren Williams, right? And that's the role I think he's going to play. I think he's going to play a breather role at best while Kyren Williams is healthy. I think he's going to be one of the best 3-down handcuffs potentially. I don't think Corum is, I think he's somewhat of a liability in the pass blocking, area. I think he's a little bit of a liability in the receiving game, and that's literally Kyren Williams' liabilities too. So I don't think Blake Corum is coming in to do what Kyren Williams doesn't do well, right? I don't think that's the case here. I think this is more of a backup type of situation. So is there a little bit more risk with Kyren Williams? 1,000% yes. But I'm willing to deal with that risk, right? And I'm willing to pay for that, and I'll buy the risk back, and I'll hold Kyren Williams. And I think you have a potential high-end RB1 on your hands for maybe a low-end RB1 type of price, right? Similar thing with Devon Achane, right? Raheem Mostert, he's 47 years old now, and he's going into this year. Listen, I do think it's going to be Mostert and Achane still, while Jalen Wright, kind of develops. I still think Jalen Wright has a little bit of development to do. But however, like Jalen Wright, this is the perfect offense for him because if you're looking for like holes to develop and running lanes to develop without you having to do anything, you just have to run straight through them. This is the offense that you want, right? So that's literally what Jalen Wright did in college. So this is perfect. So the development doesn't need to be as heavy on this offense as it would have on another offense. So I think if Mostert were to get hurt, he does have a little bit of an injury history. I still think it's Achane or 1A at the very least, right? 1B, or Achane gets 55 to 60% of the snaps, and Wright's kind of cleaning that up a little bit, right? So I think regardless of what happens, Achane is going to be a very big part of this backfield this year alongside Mostert, and next year alongside Wright, and most likely being the 1A. But I think right now, a lot of people are viewing this as a negative to Achane, whereas I'm thinking like, well, Achane was always going to have somebody complimenting him. He was never going to be this like every down or 3-down guy, 75% snap type of guy. He was never going to be that type of running back. So I think the perception on these guys are a little bit low, and I'm willing to kind of take advantage if I can.
I'm right there with you. I love that people need to remember that Achane's just never going to be that dude. He's never going to be a 20-plus carry or touch a game guy. He shouldn't be.
And he had a historic rookie running back season, and I think, the way that his season ended, right, didn't really, kind of put a bad taste in some people's mouths. But I think that we have to remember what this guy actually did, for the totality of the season.
Absolutely. So next up, Rich, who do you got for us?
Sure. So I got one guy in this one. And I don't know, maybe this is a gimme, but I really like Tyreek Hill this year, especially in teams where I'm trying to win now. Like this is it. I'm going for the championship. he's consistently a top 3 wide receiver. And there's a lot of talk about this could be his last year and everything. Like he was saying that he was only going to be here for 3 years, right? And this is year 3, I believe. And so I feel like there's a good opportunity there to get him from whoever has him on their team, especially if they're not competing. I think you could get him for somewhat cheap for what he's going to give you, but I'm willing to pay up and pay what, a first round pick for him if I needed to get him on my team. If I'm that close to a championship, if I'm that one piece away, he's who I'm targeting right now.
Okay, and just for clarity's sake, Tyreek did say he's going to retire after the 2025 season.
Oh, okay. So it's one more. He's got one more season after this one.
Yes,
my bad.
Two more total. That's okay. I just wanted to make sure that we're getting that right out there. But
yeah,
players that are kind of comparable in value. I just pulled up some rankings just for something to look at. Would you take Would you trade away Chris Olave for Tyreek Hill?
If I'm one piece away, yeah, I think I do.
Okay, all right.
For that championship, if I want that championship, it's all about the championship, right?
I think I'm there with Rich. I mean, obviously Olave is the better long-term guy,
right?
But man, if you're like, if I can get 350 or 400 points out of Tyreek, it puts me over the top this year.
Yeah,
I on a very explosive offense compared to Olave with Derek Carr.
Or yeah, exactly. That's what
I think I might make the move. You're going to regret it in 3 years, but not if you win the championship. So,
exactly. Right, well, Justin, who do you have for us?
So I got 2 guys. I'll go real quick. Kind of if I'm going to buy up running back, kind of like he said, I'm not going to buy up a guy unless I know that he's the man this year. And so the guy I've been getting a lot of, I did last year and I'm still doing it this year, is Saquon Barkley, because he's going to be the starting running back for the Eagles. People are already nervous about, he went there. Oh man, Hurts is going to get all the 1-yard touchdown runs. Barkley's not going to get any TDs. I just think there's a lot of people really nervous about him hitting the cliff as far as being that age cliff of 28. And I just like this landing spot. This is going to be the best team he's ever played on by far, with the best offensive line. So anybody who's kind of out on him, trying to rebuild, trying to get younger, I'm buying him. And he's one of the only guys running back wise I would probably buy right now. And that is because I know he's going to be the man come the number 1 at the beginning of the year. I'm not gonna have to worry about him getting replaced by somebody, in camp. So he's my guy there. And then another guy I'm not willing to put up a ton on, but I will make a move because I think there are enough people down on him, and that is George Pickens, who I talked about a little bit earlier. He's polarizing. You're gonna have certain leagues that there's no way you can get him. You're gonna have a guy who's a big fan of him. They're gonna charge an arm and a leg for him. You won't be able to get him. But I'm in leagues where people are they don't like Pickens. They don't like his analytics, and they're just willing to get rid of him. He's been a hard guy to trade for 1-for-1, but I've been able to get him in some package deals where I'll pick swap some rounds. Give me him for, I'll give you this lesser player back, and then I'll give you a 2nd-round pick for a 4th-round pick. So I've been able to make some moves like that recently for him. I'm not going crazy with him, but if somebody asked me for a late first for him, I'm doing it. I just think he's right now, after what they've done on the draft, Roman Wilson, I like him, like I said earlier, but to me, he's not coming in and taking away wide receiver 1 from Pickens. So for me, Pickens is the wide receiver from now until something crazy happens in the future. He's their number 1. So I'm willing to go get him. And if they look really good this year and, he's the man, the deep man that everybody wants him to be, I think he's going to be very hard to get in the future. So if you want in on Pickens, I think you got to do it now because I just think he's going to get more expensive.
There you go. I like Pickens. I've acquired him in a couple leagues, so I'm right there with you. That confirmation bias is always good to hear, Justin.
I love it, right? You're just agree with me, right? It makes me feel better.
So, Faraz, thank you very much for joining us today. I really appreciate it. Really appreciate all the insight. Can you remind everyone where they should follow your work and what you've been doing?
For sure. You can find us over on Instagram at Upper Hand Fantasy. You can search for us on your podcast app. You can search for Upper Hand Fantasy there. And yeah, that's pretty much it. UpperHandFantasy.com. I really, really appreciate you guys having me. And this was a lot of fun.
Absolutely. I really enjoyed it. So everyone, please make sure to go to your podcast platform of choice and download the latest episodes of the Fantasy and Frames podcast. We have one feed for all of our shows, Dynasty 365, Fourth and Frames for redraft content, as well as Shoot the Gap for IDP content. So it is a one-stop shop. Visit our website, fantasyandframes.com, for all of our rankings. And please subscribe to the show on YouTube, or, like we said, subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. But the YouTube one is big, so if you're watching on there, please hit that like and subscribe button. It would be a big help. So this is just our first Dynasty 365 episode of the day. We have one coming later this evening at 8 p.m., kicking off Fantasy and Frames Wednesday, where we are going to do a Dynasty rookie mock draft. So I'm excited to get that started and see what some of these picks look like. And tune in on Thursday for the Fantasy Football Weekly. We have a new draft show taking off next week with a few members of the Fantasy and Frames family. So stay tuned for that.
Tyler, I was going to let you know we've got the Dynasty evaluation with me and John McGlynn here on the channel in about an hour. So we're usually going on earlier in the day, but we got John Lobb. You want to check him out. We're going to do a bunch of rookie talk. We're going to be on the channel here in an hour, 6 o'clock Eastern time.
All right. And Justin and John, that show's awesome. You guys do such good stuff on there. If you haven't checked them out, you need to. Everyone, thank you for joining us on this special early episode of Dynasty 365, and have a great evening and have a great night.